I didn't realize I was being pushed away because it didn't look like rejection. It looked polite, it looked calm, it looked mature. There was one tiny habit I ignored for years. So small, I almost felt stupid saying it out loud. Every time something small or emotional came up, he'd pause. Not argue, not leave, just pause. And that's why I didn't see it, because silence feels safer than conflict. I told myself, it's just processing. It's not toxic, at least it's not yelling. Psychology has a name for this, and it's not calm, it's not maturity, it's avoidant regulation. Avoidant people don't pull away loudly, they shrink the connection quietly. And the habit that reveals them, it's not what they say, it's what they delay. They don't disappear. They make you wait. What scared me was in the silence. It was how predictable it became. Here's a tiny habit I couldn't unsee anymore. Every time things felt emotionally close, he'd suddenly get busy. Not angry, not cold, just unavailable. It only happened after intimacy, after deep talk, after connection. That's when the delay started. That's when the distance appeared. This isn't randomness. This is avoidant attachment in disguise. And they don't fear you, they fear what closeness does to them. And here's the part no one tells you. The habit isn't about ignoring you. It's about self-protection. Distance is how they regulate safety. So, the closer you get, the smaller they became. And you mistake that shrinkage for indifference. What made it confusing wasn't what he did, it was what felt right after being close to him. Every time we had a deep moment, I felt a strange drop afterwards. Just a quiet sense of distance, like something shut down. That was the habit. After intimacy, he became lighter, and I became heavier. Avoidant partners don't fear relationships. They fear what happens inside them when closeness lasts too long. So the habit isn't disappearing, it's self-soothing through emotional withdrawal. They don't leave the room, they leave the connection. The scariest part? I started adjusting my emotions to avoid that drop. I stopped leaning in because I learned that closeness came with a price, of course. That's when I realized something brutal. The avoidant habit doesn't just protect them, it slowly reprograms the person who loves them. If you've ever felt calmer when someone pulled away, ask yourself why that felt safer than closeness. I didn't understand it back then, but my body noticed something long before my mind did. There were moments when nothing was wrong, yet I felt this quiet tension sitting in my chest. He wasn't yelling, he wasn't disappearing dramatically, he was just emotionally unavailable in small doses. What confused me was this: he was present, but never fully reachable. I could talk for 10 minutes, and he'd respond with one sentence. That ended the conversation without sounding cold. That's when I started shrinking my words. Not because he asked me to, but because my nervous system learned what was safe. This is what most people miss about avoidant partners. It's not about distance. It's about control through limitation. They don't say, don't get close. They simply never make space for closeness to land. And slowly, you adapt. You stop asking certain questions. You stop sharing certain thoughts. Not because you don't have them, but because you already know the response. That's the tiny habit no one talks about. Not what they do, but what they stop doing. Avoidant attachment doesn't always look like rejection. Sometimes it looks like comfort with invisible limits as well. And the longer you stay, the more those limits start to feel normal. The scariest part isn't realizing they're avoidant. It's realizing how quietly you learn to disappear inside the relationship. I didn't realize damage was happening inside me, not in the relationship. At some point, I stopped asking questions. Not because I understood, but because asking felt heavy. That's when I didn't notice the habit anymore, because by then, I had already adjusted. I started timing my emotions. I'd feel something, then delay it, because immediate emotions scared him. And that's the part no one talks about. Avoidant partners don't just avoid you, they teach you to avoid yourself. This tiny habit wasn't about distance, it was about control through absence. When someone disappears emotionally in predictable ways, your nervous system starts filling the gaps, and that's all it does. You don't chase because you're needy, you chase because your brain hates unfinished loops. One day I noticed something strange. I wasn't anxious when he was gone. I was anxious when he was present, because presence meant uncertainty. Silence had rules, present didn't. And that's when I clicked. That habit wasn't small. My tolerance had grown too big. Avoidant attachment doesn't break you loudly, it erodes you quickly while calling it peace. And the scariest part? You start defending the silence because it feels safer than clarity. So, if you're noticing a tiny habit, don't ask what it means about them. Ask what's slowly teaching you to ignore. At some point, I noticed something strange. I stopped explaining myself. I didn't announce it, I didn't make it a rule. I just got tired of translating my emotions into a language he never learned. And that's when the habit became obvious. Here's a tiny habit no one talks about. Whenever emotional closeness appeared, he didn't fight, he didn't argue, he withdrew. Not dramatically, not angrily, quietly. It was. That's the habit. No explosion, no conflict, just absence. This isn't emotional immaturity, and it's not cruelty as well. It's avoidant attachment trying to survive closeness. For an avoidant partner, intimacy feels like a demand, even when you're not asking for anything. So, the nervous system does what it knows best. It creates distance. And here's the dangerous part. You thought the distance meant you did something wrong. You adjust your tone, your timing, your needs, but the habit didn't change because it was never about behavior. This is the moment everything clicked for me. The habit wasn't a reaction to me, it was a regulation strategy. Distance was how he stayed emotionally safe, and closeness was the threat. When you understand this, you stop chasing clarity, you stop over-explaining, and you stop mistaking silence for peace. Because now you see the pattern, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. I'm not telling you to leave, and I'm not telling you to stay. I'm just saying this. If closeness always triggers distance, then love was never the problem.